Hello everyone and welcome to the second part of this LittleBigPlanet 2 move pack analysis. In the previous one I've briefly shown what's in this DLC and focused my attention on the Movinator with an emphasis on how you can use its sensors to directly control game elements. Now in this second video I won't discuss the other tools just yet, but rather take a second look at the Movinator from a different perspective, that of a gesture recognition device. Now, while there are no specific tools for gesture recording and recognition, the motion recorder tool does something completely different, you can use those already included in the game to create gesture-based controls. And here is how you do it, or rather how I did it, as more skilled creators will likely come up with better solutions. This is just to show you that it is possible to do gesture recognition in the first place. Okay, let's pretend we want to build a right-flick gesture, which would turn on the light bulb you see on the column to the right and trigger a sound effect. First thing to do is to pick up the right sensor output for the job. In this case it's the left-right output of the horizontal rotation sensor. While connecting this sensor directly to the light and the sound effect seems to work right away, there are still a couple of issues to solve. The first one being that the sensor sends a signal when pointed in either directions. We want this to work only when it points to the right. So what we need now is a direction splitter logic. This allows us to pick up only the right signal. Simply place it on the circuit board, connect the horizontal sensor to it, and there you go. As you can see by how the positive and negative outputs of the splitter light up, we now have a way to send just the right rotation signal to the outputs by simply connecting them to the splitter positive output. So now that we have gotten the rotation recognition right, we need to add a speed variable to it. We want this to be a quick flick, not just a matter of pointing the move to the right. That would simply qualify as an angle detection, not proper gesture recognition. In order to make speed count, I'm gonna use the horizontal speed output of the Movinator connected to a sequencer through a direction splitter. The latter needed in order to turn on the sequencer only when speed is detected in the right direction. So how do we get the sequencer to provide an exact reading of the speed the sphere is traveling at? We do so by simply have it tracking the sphere position instead. Confused? Don't be, it's very simple actually. Basically, if we set the sequencer input action to positional, we get a positional representation of the speed, so to speak. Notice here how the sequencer bar reacts to my in and out movements. The faster I push or pull the sphere, the farther the bar moves along the timeline. By using this method, sphere speed can be tracked along every axis. So back to our demo setup. Here we have a sequencer attached to the right speed output, the battery on it serving as a trigger for when the speed reaches the desired value. As you can see here, I've placed a battery so that it is activated by the sequencer bar only when I swing the controller at a decent speed. Slower movements don't activate the battery, so they won't register. Now, by simply combining this with a horizontal rotation detection via an AND gate, my right flick gesture activates the two outputs only when the horizontal rotation occurs at a decent speed. Now let's increase the complexity of this by adding a second gesture activating the outputs you see on the left when I flick the controller in that direction. No explanation needed here, as I simply connected the loose ends of the logic scheme already in place to another AND gate connected to the outputs to the left. In this final example, I've added a timer to the mix in order to create a third gesture, which activates a third output when I swing the controller from right to left. By setting the timer to count down 0.3 seconds from the moment the right output is triggered, I'm basically setting the speed at which I need to perform the right-left gesture in order to trigger the third output. The timer is connected to an AND gate along with the left swing gesture, so that the third output triggers if I swing to the left while the timer is still counting down. As you can see, simply flicking the move to the right and then to the left, nothing happens with regards to the third output as long as I do so slowly. But if I perform the right-left flicks close to each other, the third output triggers. Now, if I remove the right flick outputs from the equation altogether while keeping the relative logic in place, what I get is basically a way to make a distinction between a small and a big swing. In gameplay terms, this system can be used to detect different degrees of power applied to a slapping motion. Okay, now here are a couple of examples of the motion detection in action. In this case I have connected different sound effects to different swings to simulate playing a drum kit. In this other example here, I'm using a similar system to issue orders to a Sackbot via gestures. I can have it salute me by waving the controller, or walk towards me with a come here gesture. I can also make it stop by holding the controller vertically. By the way, the jumping animation of the Sackbot was modified by placing a speed sensor connected to an anti-gravity tweaker on the Sackbot itself. When upwards speed increases upon jumping, the anti-gravity tweaker kicks in, resulting in a higher than normal jump. Anyway, another gesture I've implemented here is the go away one. Simply thrust the move forward to have the Sackbot move away from you. Finally, another gesture instructs the Sackboy to pick me up, at which point a logic system is activated which gives me direct control of the Sackbot itself by a move tilting. So, as these simple demos hopefully demonstrated, despite the lack of a proper gesture recognition tool, it is totally possible to do gesture recognition using the traditional logic elements of LittleBigPlanet 2. And this is it. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check the next part of this analysis for a glimpse at the possibilities provided by other move-specific tools, such as the motion recorder, the Movinator cursor, and of course the paint tool. Ciao!